Manila Podcast Syndicate production. Samut-Sari Conversation with Mimi, to connect with other women who may need someone to talk to around everyday's life issues and challenges, from managing career and household to inner productivity, relationships, and other hot topics. Samut-Sari Conversation with Mimi.
Okay, hello and welcome everyone to our program Samut-Sari Conversations with Mimi. This is a podcast featuring hot topics and other topics of interest for both women and men alike. And occasionally we feature guests who share their passion and commitment to their profession or talents. Here at Samut-Sari, we share stories to inspire you, stories from ordinary people who make extraordinary things and make a difference in this world. In today's episode, we will have a guest, another very beautiful woman guest. And I would like to say a few words or things about her before I formally give her the microphone. She has 14 years of experience in early childhood education, and she's a mentor with a passion for teaching and learning, and she's an advocate of play as a context of learning. I will ask her a little bit about the concept of play. But for now, I'd like everybody to welcome my guest, Raquel Chan. Hi, Raquel, and welcome to Samutsari.
Hello, Mimi. Hello, everyone.
Thank you for taking time to join me in this episode because I'm just a newbie in this world of podcasting. And as a newbie, of course, I would like to really extend my reach. So I don't want to be just talking about myself or talking on my own. It's always nice to have a conversation with somebody else who you can bounce off your ideas with. And I've invited you to guest speak or join me in this particular podcast because I know that your field of expertise or this industry or sector you are in is a sector I think that's really important and a sector that will never ever die. Because obviously there are always kids that need to be educated, and you've chosen to be in this field. So before we dive deeper into this field, I want to ask you first, what made you become an early childhood educator? What was the kind of like the aha moment for you that you said, okay, I'll be in this area as a career?
Well, when I was little, I used to always play teacher. So I'd be the teacher and I'd set up my classroom and things like that. But somewhere along the line, I ended up working in marketing in the Philippines. And then I migrated to Australia. And then I had a baby. I had a baby boy who is now 16 years old. And I was so out of my depth. I was like, I don't know what to do with this little baby. And then I realized as I was watching him grow the first few months, I realized that I was really interested into how he was thinking and learning. And there was so many interesting things that he was showing me. And then I decided, this is the right time for me to change careers. I'm in a new country. I've just had a baby and I can use this experience to really learn how to teach children. And that's where it all started. But I've always wanted to teach. I just didn't know what field I was going to teach until I had my own child.
Right. So are you telling me that you actually changed careers when you moved to Australia? So this is where you studied early childhood education and you learned about the different techniques. I suppose that's our difference because my educational training is teaching more adults. So I've been
Yeah,
in a university, so adult education is more my thing. I don't know
yeah,
much about teaching little kids. So but let's go back to your study. You talked
yeah.
about you are an advocate of context of play. So that means that might have been one of the early things that was emphasized in your course in early childhood education.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
can you explain? I don't want to be too technical, but can you
Mhm.
explain to our viewers what is this concept of play? And I'm thinking play is already ordinary and a part of a child's life. So why does
Yeah.
it have to be so much ingrained or embedded into the educational setup for early childhood learning?
So when I studied my diploma of children's services, this was to um, we were at the cusp. So we were changing, we were moving into a different you would say pedagogical training, where we
Yeah.
used to be looking at children's development. So it was a developmental framework where we have to, sort of put them in boxes where, you know, um, the trajectories that they will move from one development to the next based on their age, which is a linear trajectory. But
Yeah.
when I was studying for my diploma, the first year I learned all about developmental framework, which is about um, cognitive, physical, and things like that. And then on my second year, I was lucky enough that because of the shift in the whole early childhood industry, we were then introduced to the pedagogy of play, which is such a big difference from Piaget's developmental theory. So it talks about children as already, you know, they already come with lots of things. They already know things, and all you've got to do is enhance that. So, and it also talks about the cultural aspect and the social aspects of learning. That children doesn't just learn on their own. They're not just intrinsically motivated. They're also motivated by their interactions with peers, interactions with adults, and when I went into the field of early childhood, I was given I had two choices. I either had to go developmental framework, or I had to embrace play. And I really had close affinity with play. And then later on, this was strengthened by the development of the early youth learning framework, which works around the premise that children are inherently learning all the time in the context that we don't have to give them pen and paper to learn. There's other ways of learning and doing. And it
Mm-hmm.
also talks about different ways that children learn, that they don't just learn, by rote learning. They learn by manipulating, they learn through their senses and things like that. So I
Mm.
think that's where I was passionate about.
Right. So just for the benefit of our viewers, they don't know. So I'm gonna reveal this. I'm very lucky, fortunate, and very, very appreciative of the fact that when I launched my children's book, I launched it in your school. And that is, oh my gosh, that was a big, what do you call that? A big deal for me because I never thought that I would become an early childhood writer, a children's author. And
Yeah.
I really want to thank you because for the benefit of our viewers, Raquel really paved the way for me to be able to interact with the kids. That's the best way of launching the children's book. It's just
Yeah.
to read your book to the kids. So what's the point of writing a children's book if you don't have actual kids to benefit from your work? So really, that will be etched in my significant milestone in my career as a writer. And very recently, I launched just very recently I launched a mother's component, a mother's book, a book for moms, especially for
Yeah.
young moms.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
This is not for seasoned moms like us, but for the younger ones who are just starting off as a parent and might need a little bit more help and tips on how to manage the different aspects of their lives. So you are with kids every day of
Yeah.
5 days of your 7 days. Um,
Yeah.
I really salute all the early childhood educators because of your patience and dedication and the sense of pride that you
Mhm.
have every day dealing with the challenges of teaching those kids. They have so much energy. How do you
Yeah.
cope with all those different activities from sitting down, learning, doing outside work, having excursions? Do you have time for anything else in the classroom?
Um, I think one of the things that I've always I'm always conscious about when I'm teaching is that it needs to be fun. It needs to be fun. The kids has to want to come into the classroom and have fun. And to have fun, you really have to be fun with them. So one of the things that I like when I step into the classroom is that I let go of my adult expectations. So I don't put on, I do put on an adult hat as a teacher, but then I try to always be in the present, like, what they're doing. I try to see it in the way that they're seeing things in the world. And I think that's one of the most important thing about the way that I teach is that if it's not fun, then it's not going to be, they won't be able to learn as much as they would when they're not having fun. So if they're having
Yeah.
fun, then that's the battle won. That's the first battle won. And I guess it comes with experience. I remember my first year of teaching. I was my first year of kinder teaching. I stepped on another role, which was vacated by another kinder teacher. And for the first 6 months of my teaching, I felt like I wasn't having fun, and I was just, like. And then I looked deeper into myself, and I said, there's got to be a better way of doing this, because I know I love teaching, but there's got to be a better way of coming into the classroom and not wanting to just run, like run away because there's too many children,
Mm.
they're too noisy, there's too much energy. And I guess from experience, and one of the other things that from early on, I knew exactly what kind of teacher I want to be, and I knew exactly what kind of pedagogy I want to embrace in the classroom, and that hasn't changed at all. So when you step into my classroom, there's sort of like an emotional and a psychological environment that is created when I'm there.
Mm.
That's different from any other classroom, I guess.
Right. But when you finish at the end of the day, do you still think about your kids when you're at home? Do you still bring some of the challenges
uh,
that you face
I
during the day,
do.
or do you know how to like kind of close the doors completely, and when you're at home, you're not anymore thinking about them? I guess it's hard, but
Um,
I want to hear it from your direct experience.
Unfortunately, and I think every teacher will agree with me, you never switch off. Like, sometimes I dream of them. Sometimes I dream of the challenging kids, and in the middle of the night, I'd wake up and I think this is a good strategy, or this is a good activity. Or when I'm out and about, when I'm like, I love op shopping. So when I'm out and about doing op shops, if I see something, I'll go, this is a good activity to do with the kids. So
Mm.
it's all, I never switch up, and I think that's a bad thing. But I'm still learning, and it's 14 years, and I still haven't learned how effectively to switch off.
Mm, I think that's our difference, because I would be a little bit more emotional than you are probably. I probably wouldn't be
Mhm.
able to just not switch off. I'll absorb all the
Yeah.
things that are happening in the school, and I'm probably so emotional that I'm gonna get too attached to the kids. So
Mhm.
I don't know how you feel about those kids. Do you feel like you have 34 additional children
I
every
do.
day? Is that how it
I
is?
really do. Yeah, I really do. And at the end of the year, and all parents could attest to this, every graduation, I try not to cry, because, it's like being in their lives for that 1 year, and then you have to hand them over to the next lot. And it's a really hard feeling to let go of those children, because you literally see them grow right before your eyes. And it's a privilege to have that, but then it's really hard to let go of that. So, but
Mm.
but then after you've let go, then you're looking forward to another lot of kids that are coming the following year, and then that keeps you going. It makes it easier to let go of the old kids, because you're looking forward to the new ones that you're going to see grow for the next year.
Right. So there's like a cycle. So you don't feel
Yeah,
too sad because you'll be excited
yeah,
with the
yeah,
coming
yeah.
batch. What about the relationship between teachers and parents within the early childhood
Mhm.
space? Do you find the parents as a challenge, or do you find that you have an ally in them, or do you work close with parents? I don't know how it is, but I remember in the Philippines when my kids were really, really young, the parents are somewhat in the way of learning because kind of insist on certain things to happen in the classroom, the teachers have to always negotiate that, hey, we are the teachers, we know what we're doing, so trust us with your kid. I don't know,
Yeah.
what's the situation here? Do you find that the parents are more autonomous, or do you find yourself working closely with them, or what are the challenges if there are any?
It's funny thing you ask that question, because when I think about what are the challenges for me teaching children, it's always parents, not children. So
It's
I
the
find
parents.
children challenging, but I have the skills to deal with those challenges. Whereas with parents, it's because they're adult, and they have adult expectations, and sometimes it's really difficult because I'm an advocate for their child. And of course, they're an advocate for their child as well. But the way they see their child is different from the way I see their child.
That's
So
right.
I'm looking at an educational perspective, and they're probably looking at a more personal perspective. And in that respect, sometimes it's really difficult to balance those expectations. So like there would be parents that, especially where I'm working, where it's it's a bit of an affluent area.
Mm.
So we have Hellbury right next to us. So really that's, parents are expecting their children to know their ABCs and things like that. And I always have this, and I always tell them that, learning ABCs is rote learning. You get that at school, but they won't be able to practice the skills of dispositions, like being curious and things like that at school. They need to practice that in my classroom, so that when they go to school, they don't just absorb the learning, they actually ask questions. And
Mhm.
they think of other ways of learning, not just listening to the teacher. They might be able to see it in a different perspective, and that's what I'm trying to always tell the parents. And I remember my first few years of using play as my pedagogy, parents were always saying, what are you teaching our kids? We don't see them learning this. But at the end of the year, I'm always hitting those targets, those targets, expectations at school. They can hold the pencils correctly, they can write their names, but they're not seeing it as a traditional classroom setup.
Mm.
It was really difficult the first 2 years, but I guess further on in my career, I realized that the children are my ultimate results. If they're learning, then the parents are happy. If they're not learning, then the parents are not happy. So now it's kind of a medium. It's a balance where they ask questions, but at the same time, they they respect me. They respect my skills of teaching. So I sort of like I'm convincing them that I am teaching their children. It
Not
just
just playing
isn't
every
like
day.
the traditional way. Exactly.
Yeah. So this is a bit controversial. I don't know how much of this happens in early childhood, but certainly when you go primary schooling and maybe middle schooling, there's this idea about homework. So that's the
Mhm.
controversy around here. How much
Yeah.
homework should we give our kids, and do we give our kids homework? Does that happen also in early childhood? Do you expect some take-home tasks that the kids do, and then come back to school armed with what outputs they have done during the day, during the night, or during the past week?
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now.
How is homework, as is that an issue in early childhood education?
I don't think it is, because homework is seen as a traditional, a traditional issue for
Yeah.
school, for academic learning. And in Australia, especially in Victoria, early childhood is not the start of your traditional academic learning. So it's a pathway, but it's not, there's not a lot of expectations for them to, at the end, for teachers per se, to follow a certain curriculum every term. So it's very flexible. Our early years learning framework is quite flexible in the way that we can choose the subjects that we explore. We base it on the children's interests. So it's, I guess homework would be like, when we're learning about autumn, we ask them to collect leaves and stuff like that. Or if we're learning about recycling, we invite the parents to recycle, find some things at home that they can bring to the classroom, and we can use them for sorting and things like that. That's the limitations of and I won't even call it homework. I'll probably call it more parent input, and from home to kinder. Like, that's the connection from home to kinder, is that they share their experiences from home, and then we enhance it when they come to the kinder environment. So it's not really per se as homework.
But finding the links in terms of
Yes,
what they do at home and what they
yes,
do in
yes,
school. Yeah, that's good.
yes.
Another question that I have is, when the students are ready to move up and then leave your school to move to the next stage of their education, or their life as a child, if you if
Mhm.
it they so how much of that preparation are you doing to enable them to adjust to the next level when they leave your
Okay,
school?
yeah. Yeah, it just really, it depends. We normally ask them, are we going? Because every school has their different expectations. So if it's, say for example, Hillbury would have a different expectation for a as opposed to a public school. So Hillbury would probably expect them to know all the letters of the alphabet, write their names, spell some words and things like that. Whereas in a public school, they take them where they are at developmentally. So what we should, globally in the classroom, what we want them to, the skills and dispositions that we want them to have going on to school, is that, are they able to listen to instructions? Are they able to understand that there is an expectation in the environment where at times they will have to sit together in a group, but at times they will have to go and choose their own activities. So expectations like that, or that there's rules and behavior limits in the classroom, because in the school setting, it will have the same sort of things, and
Right.
how do you deal with social issues like friendship issues, disputes, and things like that. So you'd probably think, we already know this, but kids don't know it. They don't know how to navigate conflicts. So instead of navigating conflict maturely, they would hit or kick or do things like that. And those are the things that we teach them. We give them those tools that you don't have to hit, you don't have to kick. You use your words, or you take other children's perspective. And I think globally, it's more dispositions rather than skills that we would like them to take moving forward, because in any learning environment, they will be able to use those dispositions of curiosity. We want to know, we want to see if the kids are curious. Are they asking questions? Because when they go to school, they'll have to ask questions. They have
Yes.
to listen to their teachers.
Yeah.
They'll have to understand that I will be using these tools. And if I don't know the answer, what do I do? Do I just sit in a corner and cry, or do I ask my peers? Do I ask a teacher? Do I look in the environment and see if there's a book that I can use? Say, for example, a child says, I want to draw a horse, but I can't draw a horse. It just doesn't stop there. What we do is we say, well, how do we draw a horse? What does horse look like? And then
Mm-hmm.
eventually they can have those skills themselves, so that
Right.
there's no adult that would guide them. It will be them
Mm-hmm.
that say, where can I find the resources to deal with these questions that I have at them? And
Yeah.
they don't teach that at school.
Yeah. So I'm thinking now that, do you find yourself in a situation, or has any of your co-teachers find themselves in a situation where they they have already established a certain things in the class, or they've
Mhm.
taught the students about those disposition and some of the life skills, fundamental life skills, and then you find yourself, so the kids leave school, go back to their homes, and then the following day or the following week, you find yourself, have this child undone, or did they undo, or did they delete, or did they modify some of the things that they learned, and it becomes even
Mhm.
more difficult to correct those things, or it
Yeah.
becomes more challenging to manage any sort of conflict or difference in the way that you have taught them. Have you ever had those instances?
Um, Only a few, and I would say only because they have some learning challenges. But for children that are within the norm, it's easy for them to understand that as long as you've got a consistent expectation, rules, and behavior limits in the classroom, it will never change. And they know that they know when they come in. Parents would say, they don't even pack up at home, but here, as soon as they hear the pack up song, they're like they're like little workers packing up and things like that. It's not that you're training their mind. It's just that it's instinctive for them, because they understand that this auditory cue means this is a time for me to pack up. So
Yeah.
you take away the command of saying, it's time to pack up. So there's only the sound that they can hear, and they associate that sound with packing up, or they associate that sound with, I have to look at where that sound is, so I have to stop talking, stop playing, and things like it takes a while to get those behaviors in place, and it stays that way as long as the environment is consistent in implementing those expectations, limitations, and rules. But sometimes children with other learning challenges, normally, as you say, they would go home, then they come back and they forget that, oops, this is the learning expectations, and then you'll have to start all over again.
Yeah. So how do you handle kids in a given classroom? So the kids with some learning difficulties or the more challenging ones, are they mixed up with the
Yeah,
kind of regular
yeah.
kids? So there's no difference in the way you approach the lessons and the activities?
So we have what we call differentiation of learning. So that happens in the school curriculum as well, but it's more they're more individualized lessons, whereas ours would say, for example, we're learning about sorting by color. So instead of asking them to sort, you'll give them provocation. So you'll have those colored stones, red, blue, and yellow, say, for example, your primary colors. And then instead of telling them, let's sort all the reds, let's sort all the blue, you just provide the materials for them, and you give them like little receptacles or little containers.
Yeah.
And then they will then approach that task based on what they already know. Some would count, some would sort, others would just line them up. So that's where your differentiation comes from. You have the same activity, but that activity is very open-ended, so that any child can come in and you can observe what the child is bringing to this activity, because some are ready to count. So they would be counting the gemstones. Others are just in the sorting stage, so they will be sorting. While others, where they're at the lowest conceptual understanding, what they're going to do is they're just going to line them all up, or if they're artistic, they will make something out of it. So
Right.
although you put an expectation on the task, you then observe what the children bring to the task, so that you know where they are at the moment. So the ones that are counting, you'd probably plan further on with counting activities. The ones that are sorting, you'll use sorting with different attributes. Whereas the ones that are like on the basic conceptual level, you probably have to increase their conceptual understanding more. So with children with learning challenges, I think the most important thing is that we look at what their strengths are, and from there use those, like we use the strengths to then deal with the challenges that they have. So at the moment, for example, I have this boy that is really curious about our learning environment, and he likes to, he likes new things. When there's a new activity, he likes to go there. So we use that strength to then overcome some of his challenges, like when he's allowed to choose the play spaces that he wants to go to, or when he's trying to be social with other children, then it becomes a problem because he can't take perspective. He has to have an adult with him to role model sharing and turn taking. So instead of increasing those opportunities where he's allowed on his own to join other children's play, we then make the environment a little bit more novel all the time. So there's always new activities, new resources that we put out, so that then we take on his interest of, he's always curious to know what's this, how can I do this new activity? So then we're capturing his interest longer and longer, and there's only little chances for him to then be wandering around the classroom, or making decisions for himself, or I have to go to this group. But then when he goes to that group, he's not able to then look at other children's perspective, and then that creates chaos, and they start fighting and things like that.
Right.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now.
Okay. So it's very interesting how we look at the kids, but I want to move on to the part of the conversation where we talk about the adults in the room. So the teachers.
Yeah.
Very, very briefly, what could you say or see as the attribute or attributes of a person that would adequately and comfortably fit into the role of an early childhood educator? Because this obviously is not for everyone. So what is
Yes.
the set of skills or soft or hard skills or personal attributes do you need to have
Yeah.
to succeed in this area?
Yeah. You definitely need to have a positive disposition, because when you're with kids, like you've got to be able to join in the fun. And if you can't let go of your adulthood, you won't be able to then get onto their level, because already they see teachers as, the one who dictates everything. So then that becomes, the power balance between that is that if I see you as the one holding the power, then I'm forever challenging the limits of your power over me. Whereas if you come in as a peer, or as someone that's not enforcing the rules, but giving them the opportunity to think for themselves, if the rules are meant to be followed, then the teaching becomes easier. The part where I think most of the early childhood teachers that I know that are not um, efficient in their job is the ones that always want to have the power in the classroom. They always want to be the one to dictate what the child are going to be doing. So you've got to have that expectation that children are agentic as they are, and you've got to trust them that they can understand, that they're able to think for themselves. If you always have that idea that I will be the one controlling everything, then that's that the battle will always be a battle.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, let's embrace the children as they have their own learning, they understand what they want to learn, let's ask them questions. You've got to be more open to that. And I think at this position where you come in as the authority doesn't really work well for early childhood. I mean, in my case, certainly I've never come into the classroom and positioned myself as, you've got to listen to me because I'm the teacher, and it's always worked for me, because when you give them when I ask them, when they're climbing higher than they should be climbing, and I don't say, don't climb, I say, is that safe? Then that makes them think, oh, hang on, is it safe? Then that gives them an opportunity to say to themselves, no, it's not safe, I'm going to climb down. So there's a difference when you're approaching them from
it's the perspective. It's a perspective. So that's very enlightening, because I think at this stage I'm still the parent. The parent
and it's kind of difficult.
Yeah, it is.
I'm a parent too, and I parent like a Filipino. So really,
so
when you
tiger moms, tiger moms at home, but you're as gentle as a lamb when you're in the class.
I'm actually not gentle. I'm very firm, but I'm fun firm. I don't understand how I do it.
Yeah, I understand. Fun. Because these kids are very intelligent. They can pick up your negative energy, and they can pick up your positivity, and they just react to how you approach them. So a teacher who enters the career as an early childhood educator, what is the career progression looking like? So if you've been here for 14 years, is there like like a corporate ladder, so to speak, in the field of early childhood education? Do you guys have some sort of hierarchy? Like if you worked in, like you said, you were previously in the corporate world,
Yeah,
obviously you would like to reach the whatever highest
yeah,
position
yeah.
you can have. Is it the same
Mhm.
in the early childhood education space?
So if you work it, if just for the early childhood profession, where you can be an early childhood teacher, and then when you want to go up a bit, you can be a preschool field officer, or in the family daycare setting, you can handle a couple of daycare family daycares. So you can be like you can be a mentor. So at the moment, I am a mentor and an early childhood teacher in my setting. So I mentor the other educators in the room that have lower qualifications than me. And of course, because I've got cert for in teaching and assessment, I can work in TAFE. I can teach diploma and certificate of early childhood services. So that's probably the progression. If you work in a long daycare setting, you'd probably be you can be a director. So you can go in being a director. But a couple of years ago, I've been asked to be director, but that's not really where my passion lies. So I don't like admin and regulations and things like that. So I think I'm always with me personally, my profession will always be anchored on early childhood. So it could be teaching TAFE, training students in year 11 and 12 more likely if I get my secondary teaching degree, then it's always going to be early childhood. I don't want
That
any
has always been in
admin.
your heart.
Yeah,
That's always be a
yeah,
part of you. Yeah.
yeah,
This is great because a lot of the young kids right now, meaning those that are going to finish year 12 or those who
yeah.
are thinking about what could my future career be like, it's always good to have a glimpse of uh, people's different professions. Like obviously we are talking about kids and teaching
Yeah.
and childhood, because like I said, it's a field that will never ever go away. Parents will
Mm,
always need support and education for their kids. Teachers will always have a place, just like nurses will always have a place in society.
yeah.
People will get sick, hospitals will
Mhm.
need
And we see that
support
now
staff.
in COVID.
Yes,
COVID,
exactly.
you know?
So I think you are in the right place. You are kind of secure in the sense that you're making a difference in your microscope, in your little
Yes.
world, in your
Yeah.
classroom. But the future of the kid always starts with what they learn from early childhood. So
Mhm.
definitely you're building the blocks, foundational blocks to enable them to succeed in the future. So I really also salute early childhood educators for the work that you do. It's not easy to look after 20 or more kids
Yeah.
in a class every
Yeah. It's not
day.
for the
And
faint-hearted, Mimi.
yes, it's not for the faint-hearted. You're like brain surgeons. It's not for the faint-hearted. Let's change the pace a little bit because I don't know if I've told you. And earlier in my own career, I used to be working in a university radio station. So I'm
Yeah.
a script writer. I'm a producer. I'm an anchor. I'm all sorts of things to the station, and I've collected a number of emails that I've received that I've just let it sit there because I didn't know what
Yeah.
to do with it when I finished my work at the university in the Philippines. So now I'm kind of reviving some of these letters, and
Mhm.
I wouldn't like it if you can help me um, sort it out. So obviously these are emails of some years ago, but the challenges that are presented in these emails are still the
Yeah.
same. So
Mm.
maybe we can advise the people that are currently in a similar situation on what they want to
Mm.
do. So let's see whether your advising skills as
Oh.
an option of your teaching skills for work. So what I've done is some of these are written in Filipino. So what I've done is just to translate them into English. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll read it and we'll start dissecting this and sorting it out.
Yeah.
So, dear
That's it.
Mimi, please keep my identity by calling me Ashley. So, I'm an office worker for 3 years and have found good office mates to work with. However, there is this girl who just brings negative energy every time she enters the room or is in our company. She likes to make herself feel superior among everyone else. I really don't want to be with her, but I notice that she seems to trust me more than the rest of the people in the group. I do not know whether to tell her or not about what other people say about her. So I'm
Mhm.
stressed out, and sometimes I don't want to go to work anymore because I don't want to see this person. What do you think should I do? There you go. I don't know whether you
Oh.
have experienced something similar in your past. What can we advise people like Ashley who have
Yeah,
been or are in a similar situation at the moment?
yeah. Well, I've actually experienced that quite recently with the person that I'm working with, a new person that I'm working with. And for the first instinct for me was to really critically reflect on why I don't like this person. Like why does she bring out the negative feelings in me? And then when I started unpacking it, I felt like there was an attribute of her that doesn't sit well with me. And then I started asking the people that works with us whether this was just me personally
Yes.
feeling that, or
Yeah.
whether they can feel that particular disposition that she has that doesn't sit well with me. And in my questioning the other people around us that works with us, it just so happens that they were all feeling the same way. So then I can safely say to myself that this is not just me being biased to that person. There's this particular attitude that she has that doesn't sit well with all of us. And so what I did was, um, I then asked our boss to sit down together and then just address the issues that we're dealing with in the classroom. So as team members, so we sort of talked about the particular trait that she has that really challenges us to work with her. So I sort of went about it the admin way, if you know what I didn't confront her. I didn't badmouthed her against my other team members.
Yeah.
I sort of made it like a professional meeting where we address the issue. And I think if you're dealing with it in a work environment, that should always be your first point of call, is to address it in a professional manner and to just hone in on that particular trait that makes it difficult for you to be in the workplace.
Yeah. So are you saying that, in a nutshell, for people like Ashley who are in a similar situation where there's this challenging behavior, we're not
Mhm.
saying this person is a difficult person to work with, but it's a behavior that is not just isolated, and other people
Mhm.
are also feeling the same
Mhm.
way.
Yeah,
Negotiate a time with your one-up manager
yeah,
or your boss
yeah.
to be
Mhm.
your advocate, and maybe through a dialogue, just like what you did
Yeah,
in your office,
yeah.
maybe looking at that from a semi-objective to a very objective point of view rather than attack that person is the way to
Yeah,
go. Yeah.
yeah.
But
I
if
think it's
the, mm,
yeah, and
yeah,
I think if you look at it from productivity in the workplace, then that becomes a workplace issue rather
mhm,
than a personal issue,
yes,
which
yeah,
sometimes
that's
is
good.
easier to deal with that rather than someone saying to you, you're not a good person in a personal manner. But if
Right.
you say it in a professional way, linking it to what's happening in the workplace, then it becomes more of a some objective issue rather than a subjective issue.
Yeah. So the like you said, do it the admin way or the more professional way would probably be the easier way to get around that. Well, that's a very good advice. I love that advice. So anybody who's experiencing certain issues, or if you have questions and you want me to address those questions, please feel free to send me an email. My email is mimi@dinosocial.com. Raquel, I wish to thank you for spending your time with me in this podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it.
I
And
did.
please do come back because there are obviously other topics that we can talk about. So
Yeah.
I just need to adjust to your schedule because I know how tiring it could be. So maybe on another day off, that you have,
Yeah,
we can plan on another
definitely.
podcast episode. So
Yeah.
before I totally close, can you say anything or any last few words or things about early childhood that you'd like to share to the viewers and listeners?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for inviting me to chat. It was a really interesting chat, and I really enjoyed it. And I guess what I would like to say to parents, to teachers, to parents of difficult children, to parents of challenging children, that you know, we just always have to be in the moment with kids. Just always be in the moment. See the world through their eyes. And I
That's
guess
right.
when you see the world through their eyes, then you learn a lot, and you're always going to be learning with kids, because they teach us so many lessons. And every day when I work with kids, I end up going home being enhanced as an adult. Right? They teach me so much more than I teach them, and that's my take on early childhood.
Wow, how inspiring. So, how I wish I could still give birth to more babies, but that's
And me
impossible at
too.
this stage in our lives. However, we've adopted another bunny. So,
Yeah.
our Dipper now has a little brother called
Oh,
Charlie. So,
yeah.
thank you again, Raquel. And for our viewers and listeners, if you have any stories or topics that you wish to feature in the show, please reach out to me. I would like to remind everyone that Samut Sari is a member of the Gorilla Podcast Syndicate. And obviously, if you want to connect further, I have my Twitter. Please search my name, Mimi Laurilia. I have my YouTube channel. You can reach out to me or
You're
by
very busy
visiting
lady, Mimi.
by visiting my Facebook page. So thank you, Raquel, and thank you everyone for spending time with us. Until the next episode of Samut Sari. Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you're notified when a new episode is posted in Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, or via RSS. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, rate and review this podcast and share it with your friends. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And if you want to know more, check out gorillapodcast.com.ph.
A Gorilla Podcast Syndicate production.